which I'm about to give, and then another one which is more focused on an update to what we've already seen in previous meetings. So this 30,000 foot view, so a high-level view of where we are with the budget. So this budget responds to a number of challenges facing the district and provides students the resources they need. So, you know, we came out of COVID. It does seem like a long time ago, but we are still seeing some of the impact of COVID and other trends in student needs. So there's a continuing, ongoing need for academic intervention, for wider social and emotional learning supports, and increasing special education services. On the other hand, we're also facing additional financial pressures, and I will go into some of these in more detail. We saw a lot of federal funding coming out of COVID to over $2 million, and that ends in September of this year. And so we no longer have those funds, and they were being used to pay for some positions in the district. We have new staffing contracts. We're in the middle of negotiating right now, and we do have a reduction in inflation. We've also seen there's a reduction in inflation, and so that which is impacting the needs in the district, you know, the supplies we buy and so on. So the draft budget I'm going to talk through is $46.5 million. It's an increase of just over $2 million, and that's a 4.8% increase in the budget overall. So that's not what the school committee has voted on. So that was voted on at the most recent finance subcommittee, and it'll be presented tonight for the school committee to vote on, but that's the most up-to-date number we have. And that budget breaks down to be an increase of 4.9%, $1.4 million for Harwich, and just under $600,000 for Chatham at 6%. So that's a real high-level view. So that's the number, 2.1 million increase, 4.8%. Let's just see, sure. Yeah, just double-checking my numbers. Yep, that's still right. And the 4.8%. So just to put that in a little context where that fits, so this is a slightly challenging slide to see, but this is our budget since the start of the district. The blue line is the budget, and then between that it tells you how much the budget went up every year. So you can see that in context. So this budget increase would compare to just about 3.5% is the average since FY13, and I took an average from 2016 as well, because before 2016, you didn't have any of the debt of the high school. So it's only really since 2016 that debt's been included. That's why you see that big jump there, almost 12%. And that 4.8, so 4.8% is higher than the average, but given these challenges we're facing, we know we need to respond to the drop in ESSER, the federal funding, inflation's been high, and we have new staff contracts. I think 4.8% is a reasonable request in light of all those needs. And so this is how the budget's funded. So this is how we pay for the budget. There's the state and other revenue, which is the funding we get from the state. That's Chapter 70, but also includes interest that we've received and other miscellaneous revenue. It doesn't include transportation or excess and deficiency. They're listed out separately. But just that line is 3.8% increase. Regional transportation overall is down 5.8%, and it's really because the regional transportation offset is a combination of money we think we'll receive next year and money we have left over from previous years, and the money we have left over from previous years is lower than in the past. So that's the main reason it's down. And these two numbers, so the state revenue and the regional transportation, that's based on the state's draft budget. So the state's released a draft budget, and it's got a number of steps to go through the budget process in the state before it's finalised. But these are the numbers we have now, and actually the way the process works is we will probably vote the final budget before we have the final numbers on the state. So these are always estimates. These are pretty decent estimates because they're based on what the state's telling us at the moment. It's not just us trying to work it out, but it is still just their draft numbers, and we will, as we go through the process, I will update them if we have them before we finalise the budget, but it'll be a kind of ongoing process. Excess and deficiency that's the money, that's essentially, it's a bit like town's free cash. It's money we have left over from previous years, and it's the amount we have left over at the end of 2023, which has been approved by the state, and we're using a portion of that to offset the future budget. We've been using $800,000 for a couple of years now. At some point, we have our excess and deficiency has increased or stayed about the same. If excess and deficiency starts going down because we're using up this $800,000, then we'll have to reduce that amount because we can't use it forever or we'll just run out. So excess and deficiency is about 2.1 million right now. So we're roughly where it is, I think. And so, if we use up $800,000 of that, that's fine. And then we'll add to it this year. Hopefully at the end of the year, we'll have some money left over and that'll add to it. So as long as that net keeps being positive or close to zero, then we're fine. But at some point, we may have to reduce that amount. So because you've the overall budget increase was 4.8%. State and revenue has only gone up 3.8%. Transportation's down and excess deficiency hasn't gone up. That means the assessments have to go up more than the budget increase in order to make up the difference. And that's why you see Harwich's assessment there is plus 4.9%, and Chatham's is up 6.2%. So let's just look at those in a historical context. So this is a really difficult slide to see, but I'll explain it very quickly. And the next slide hones in on focuses in on the most recent years, and it's a little easier to see. But what this is how the budget has been funded since the beginning of the district, since it was formed back in FY13. So the grey bar is the grey bar is the. I'm just checking. Okay, good. So the right numbers. Okay, the grey bar is Harwich's assessment. The light blue bar here is Chatham's assessment. This yellow line in here that doesn't have a number on it, that's excess and deficiency. The dark blue block there is the state funding. So, and then the orange line going over the top, that is the budget. So you can see how these numbers contribute to make up the budget. And if we look at the next slide, so this is same slide, but just since FY20, so you can see. So I thought it was really interesting because, so here's Chatham's assessment. So we changed how the assessment was calculated here. So in the run-up, the 3 years before that, Chatham's assessment was going down, and then we changed how the assessment was calculated, and we said, okay, each town, you have to first pay for your own elementary school, and then we'll split up everything. And from that point, Chatham's assessment increases have been positive, or changes have been positive. And so that's in a large part because we made a change. The state number has fluctuated up and down, so that makes life a little more difficult to predict. We've had 5-6% and just 2% right coming out of COVID. A larger increase last year when state revenue was up so much, and then now it's it was down to FY24. Right now 2.4%, so that's okay. That's a combination of that includes transportation, not in this slide. So the reason that the Chatham's is higher this year is a number of reasons. When I went through each of their account lines. So one of the reasons is that we're planning to reopen a preschool section. So that's one section. It's like a half-time teacher and 2 half-time instructional assistants, some supplies. It's not a huge amount of money, including health insurance for one of those people is like $80,000-$90,000 when you include health insurance. So it's not a huge amount, but that coupled just with other ongoing increases that the other schools are facing as well. And because the numbers are a little smaller, we have a couple of people who have moved on to health insurance that weren't previously, and just all those are enough to bump up the percentage increase. So the actual increase is still obviously is much less than Harwich's. It's just the percentage increase has gone up. And so, as I mentioned back here, when we changed the assessment methodology, had we not done that, this is what the assessments would look like. So right now we're looking at 20.8 and 10.3 in the assessments. Had we not done this, they would be another $1 million difference, over $1 million difference. So Harwich's would be at almost 31 million, and Chatham's would be down at 9.2 million. So that's obviously a significant difference. And so that's definitely something we'll highlight when we talk to the Harwich Board of Select Board, because while the increase is obviously not hugely palatable, it could be a lot worse. And I'm sure Chatham Select Board are going to ask us why theirs is so high, because originally when we first did it, it was like, oh, the difference is about $700,000, but I think part of the issue is that the underlying trends are still there. So as things get more expensive, they're going to get further and further apart, because we knew this was going to be an issue. We knew that the original method was going to get worse and worse for Harwich, or bigger and bigger difference. So as that gets worse and worse and we stay a little lower, that gap's going to get bigger and bigger between what it was and what it's going to be. And so the way the assessments work to the numbers, and this is why we only now have a good idea of where we are with the budget, because a key part of the assessment is the minimum local contribution. So when we calculate the assessments, the state provides the number, and the first thing we do is we assess to each town their minimum local contribution. Now, both towns pay a lot more than the minimum local contribution, but it's the way the formula works is like the split between the two towns of the total minimum local contribution is part of the assessment. And so that split determines a lot of how much each town, what the share of the total assessment is determined really by the share of the minimum local contributions. So that's why this number makes such a big difference, or can impact the budget if it changes a lot. And so the minimum local contribution each town has to pay is based largely on their foundation enrollment, which is this blue line here. That's all the students who live in each town who attend public school, whether or not it's Monomoy. If they go to any school, they're included in that foundation enrollment. And so you can see both towns' foundation enrollment really has been going down since FY20 or before. And the decreases are relatively similar, but it's just off a much smaller number here. And so although the gradients are similar, this is maybe a little steeper. You're also it's a bigger percentage drop for Chatham. And so that's impacting that minimum local contribution calculation. This is the assessment calculation was complicated, and it's got so much more complicated with the new assessment methodology, so I won't go through it in much detail, because that would be just mean. But, just to understand that this minimum local contribution, which the state sets, impacts the assessment. It's influenced by foundation enrollment, and Chatham's foundation enrollment has been going down faster than Harwich's, and so that impacts the assessment. Whenever I see pie charts and slides, I'm like, oh, they're the worst. But I thought this was very interesting. I wanted to just explain a little bit about how we spend the budget. This is one of those things that you've not seen before, so I've added it. So this is the FY25 budget as presented, and it's broken up into the major accounts, which is a sort of categorization that the state sets, so that allows us to compare ourselves to other districts. And the two biggest ones here are teachers, and this is classroom teachers. So this is really just teachers teaching in classrooms, and that's the green, and benefits, which is grey, and that's all benefits for all staff. And that together is 50% of our budget. And then the other big ticket items, debt and retirement. So that's retirement of debt. So that's paying debt on the high school construction. The other one, the pupil services, that includes transportation down here. Programs with other districts, this includes school choice and out of district. And other teaching services includes instructional assistance. And the rest are mostly self-explanatory. The ones up here at the top, this is guidance and testing. I can't remember what that one is, way up at the top. Not quite see that. Administration up here in the green, and then fixed assets. So that's like capital improvements, purchases, that little sliver there. So I think it's interesting on itself, but what's more interesting, I think, is that here's FY16. Is the next slide. So you can see it's not changed all that much in the last 9 years. So teachers are now up, and it's 1% more, and combined with benefits. Benefits is higher. So the most significant changes I noted here is that in the last 9 years, retirement has gone down, because this is 16 and it's 4% now. It was 7% then. Programs with other districts, which is down here, and that includes school choice, And so as school choice has gone down, and that's something I'm going to come back to, that's costing the district less. And so those monies have been able to fund this increase in teachers. Benefits, unfortunately, have gone up just across the country. Health insurance and property insurance is included in there, and that has gone up and is increasing part of the budget for us. And then the other one I wanted to highlight, so other teaching services, so that's 5% there, and here is 8%, which is a significant increase in our budget. That includes instructional assistance, and that is driven by needs within IEPs for special education. And so we've seen, that's a theme we've spoken about a lot, but we've seen an increase in the number of instructional assistants, and that's impacted the budget, and that's providing for our students. So I also wanted, when I was thinking about what would the public like to hear, all of them, what would they all like to hear? And one of the things is, how do you know what we are spending is the right amount of money? It's very challenging. I mean, we know what we need, but one way is to compare ourselves to other school districts. So unfortunately, in order to get this data, the most up-to-date data available is FY22. So it's a little out of date, but I think it's still instructive. So this chart is the per pupil expenditure for all the districts in the state. You start with the lowest per pupil, that's people spending the least per pupil, all the way up to the ones that are spending the most. And each district is a line. And so up here, you have to be the outliers here are people like Provincetown, because they're so small, their costs are just spread over a much smaller group of people. Here's Monomoy. So we're about, 2/3 of the way up. We're actually 114th out of 398, so 398 is here. One is high, we're 114 down. And let's see, here's some other, so here's Nauset, they're higher than us. DY is a little lower. Is it not work?
We don't have that one.
Is it?
Oh, it is.
I think it's this, right?
Yeah, that is it.
But it's reverse?
That's how it printed.
All right, I'll get you the print.
I just,
That's
I
weird.
think it's just
I don't know.
reverse, maybe?
I don't know.
Yeah. So that did not print out well in the pack.
Yeah.
My apologies. It did not at all. But so you have,
I was trying really hard.
Yeah. Can you just quickly work out where it is in that block?
Yeah.
So over here you have Nauset, then you have DY down here just below us. And then I think, and then Barnstable's down here. I just grabbed a few people to compare us to. State total is here. So that's the average for all the students reported in the state. So they add up all the budgets, divide it by all the students, and that's the number there. So I think, there's so much goes into this. So I don't think you can read too much into it, but I think it can give you a sense of where we are, right? So I don't think, I think the difference between us and DY could be, any number of things. But I think that we're roughly about 2/3. I feel like that's a good place to be, right? We know we live in an expensive place anyway, so that will be driving up these costs. We know we want our students to be well served and our programs well funded, but we want to be conscious of costs. We don't want to be too high. So I feel like we're in a nice place right here. And the next slide, so this is back in FY14, so you can see how things have changed. So we're here. So we were at this point 94th. So we're actually, although there was fewer districts reporting for one reason or another, things like charter schools have been added since then, and there may be other reasons why districts didn't report in FY14 but have now. But we're actually 94th. So we're actually doing better in comparison than we are now, or we were paying higher in comparison to the rest than we are now. And here are those others. So Nauset is actually kind of similarly placed to where we are now. DY was actually higher. And then there's the state total. So we're relatively close to the state total as we are now. So I feel like, so I think this is instructive. So we've kind of stayed the course. So I feel like we're in a good place. We've stayed in a good place for the last, what would that be, 8 years. And I think that continues to be the case. So one of the other points, I just threw this in just to highlight, an ongoing challenge for the district for everybody is the high inflation. So inflation's definitely down. So this is just, this just shows the consumer price indexed inflation. This impacts the cost of supplies. This impacts the cost of supplies, and it also impacts our staff, and therefore influences our employee contract negotiations. This is what when the people are going to buy at the grocery store, this has impacted their costs. So, we're down to like 3-4%, which is still historically high for the last 20 years, 10, 15 years. And then just carrying on about what we do with the money. So this is, we're in the process of developing the strategic plan. Joy Jordan provided this beautiful graphic just to show some of the things we're focusing on. The portrait of the graduate implementation. This is the portrait of the graduate compass down here. Learning and academics and being and wellness are the three sort of big pots that we're focused on in the strategic plan. And you have heard, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that in the coming months. But that's driving the requests that we've included in this budget. So you have seen this, I think everybody here has probably seen this slide already. The ones that are not shaded are the ones that have been included in the budget. These are the requests that go above and beyond the usual items that are included in the budget. And the highlights really are increased professional development, implementing the strategic plan. We also increase special education needs, and that's driving addition to the speech language pathologist and the physical therapy position. And we know we want to continue to improve our academic programs, and that's the ELA curriculum and the science textbook. There are items down here which have not been included at this point. Those are items that we would still like to fund, if not this year, then in future years, but didn't make the cut for this year's budget. Keeping in mind where we are, keeping in mind how we want to present the budget and all the other pressures we're facing right now, it was not felt prudent to include these. And we, for some of them, particularly like the science budget and the courtyard project, we'll look for grants and to fund that. Another big part of the budget this year, and continues to be, this has been a bit of a theme for my budget presentations over the last few years, is the importance of funding capital improvements throughout the district. So every couple of weeks we meet in this beautiful building, but not all our buildings look like this, and they're not all this new, and they need investment, including particularly the middle school needs a lot of work. And so we've sought to increase our capital and improvement budget over the last few years, and we'll hopefully be able to continue to do that. The big project here that we're looking at is to look at replacing the siding and trim on the middle school. So if you've been to the middle school recently, the siding and trim is in some state of deterioration. The shingles are just worn away from the rain and the wind and the snow and the cold, and that's allowing water into the building. And that will, in the long run, it will just get worse and worse, and it will give us more costs inside the building as water infiltrates into the building, and then it requires further repairs. So we have started to investigate the possibility of borrowing funds in order to pay for the entire building to be done at one time. So originally we had planned to try and do like sections of the building at a time, but when we looked into it, that was going to be more expensive on an annual basis than just borrowing, say, over 20 years and doing it all at once. So that would have a lower direct impact on a year-to-year budget. So we've started the process of doing that, and we're going to be talking to the towns about whether or not that's feasible. So that's down here under the debt now, the first payment in middle school. So we put in a nominal $250,000. May not be that much, but it's hard to tell at this point. But that would be the first payment on that work if it was started in time for next year. And I think that would be a great project for this middle school, and it would just look so nice to have that work done. It'd be so important for the building, and it would have a big impact on the teachers and students there. We also have a number of smaller capital improvement projects, including tiles, rooftop units, updating the smoke alarm system is it's still working, it's still good, but it's getting harder to find parts. So we would like to start to replace those smoke alarms. That was actually what I think. This will come up in the meeting as well, but we're looking at the middle school roof, so we're going to apply to the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, to have the roof replaced. So so when it comes to being approved by the MSBA, so all the districts will apply, lots of districts will apply, and they basically order the projects in terms of the age of the building and the age of the roof, and that's what determines whether or not those projects get funded. And we thought that our building roof was all 20 years old. However, we had a new report done recently by a new consultant came in, and they reckon a large portion of the roof is actually 34 years old. So I guess at some point they applied a rubber coating, like a liquid rubber coating. They literally got up and painted it on. And so in previous reviews, they thought it was newer than it actually is. And this new company came up and they kind of peeled it back, and they think it's 30 years, so much older than we originally thought. So that's great because we're right on the cusp at 27 years old to be replaced with MSBA. At 34, I don't know how it works because it's not the whole roof that's 34, it's just a section of it. But I think that really improves our chances of getting funded. So it's really exciting. So if we were able to get the roof fixed over the next couple of years and deciding done at the middle school, I think that would be huge for that building and it'd be a great step forward for the district. And it's all very affordable. So there you go. So now this is more of the sort of stuff you have already seen, school committee, though not everybody here will have. So there are other factors, some of which I've touched upon, which are influencing this budget and sort of driving up our costs this year. Health insurance, we had estimated it to be higher. We thought it would be 10%. It's actually coming in 8%, which is good, but that's still a significant increase in our costs. So over almost, $600,000 is still a lot of money to be increasing in our health insurance costs. Our budget requests, so that's that table I showed you earlier, capital and debt that we talked about, and maintenance costs. So I've added this, so we've been going through the budget, and I keep hoping that our HVAC repair costs and our building maintenance costs are going to come down, and they keep staying where they are. So we've had to increase our budget line since I last presented. I've increased the budget line on our on our HVAC costs and repairs, and they're now up to $227,000 increase over the starting budget last year. What is not, which is no longer here, is utilities, because we thought utilities were going to increase, and actually they are not looking like they'll increase quite as much as we thought. We're just about to come to the end of our natural gas contract, and the quote we've got right now is we'll keep our rates the same. So actually, rather than seeing a big increase on gas, we hopefully will keep it relatively similar to what it is right now. Electricity is a different story. That is going up a lot, but we've budgeted already for that increase this year. It didn't increase as much as we thought it would this year, so we've kind of got a surplus that will pay for the increase next year, just in the budget. And then, this will be familiar to school committee, but the ESSER positions, those are positions which we funded with the federal funds to support districts responding to COVID. So we currently have 9 positions. That's less than that in FTE, but it's 9 positions which are funded through ESSER in a range of roles. A lot of them around social emotional learning and special education needs, and also in pre-K positions. So once that federal funding is no longer available, those positions will need to be funded by the budget, and that's putting pressure on that budget number. Coupled with that, we also, as I mentioned, we're in negotiation with our employee organizations for new contracts, and we know that our district is lagging somewhat compared to our neighbours, and we have to make an improvement in our salaries that we're offering our staff in order to improve our recruitment and retention. So this number here, the $630,000, that's a kind of net figure. So that includes some assumptions we've made about how the contract negotiations will come out. It includes our estimate of all the step and lane changes that we see with the existing staff as they move. It includes some turnover estimates, because as we see, as people leave and are replaced, often they're replaced with somebody lower down, and that saves us some money. And it does also include some class position reductions as we particularly renorm. This is the focus. So we reduce the number of positions because we're seeing a reduction in the number of students, particularly at the middle school and the elementary schools. Not so much at the high school yet. That comes in a couple of years' time. But as we're seeing the number of students reduce, we're going to reduce the number of positions in response to that, and also to help fund those ESSER positions that are moving back into the budget. I mean, I am conscious that I'm cheating, so I'm doing a net figure because there's a lot of assumptions going in there, around the contract negotiations, around turnover savings, but we know that this is where we need to end up, and we think that through the plans that we have in place that we'll be able to deliver this budget. There are some things that are going the right way. So, and the biggest one, and this has been instrumental in the change. It's the last time the school committee voted to this round of a vote, is school choice tuition. So that's the amount of money we pay for students who live in Harwich or Chatham but choose to attend public schools out with Monomoy. And that number just keeps going down. So we're retaining more students. Fewer students are choosing to opt out, and so we have less money to pay. And that's partly because we keep investing in our programs and our staff and our buildings, and so that attracts students and keeps them here. And that's down $260,000 over the last couple of years. So exactly when we didn't budget all of it last year because you're kind of waiting to see, but now that trend seems to be consistent, and that's why we're able to budget the entire amount. So that is a huge, and this year the costs are estimated to be around $500,000, just shy of $500,000, and in FY24 we had budgeted $760,000. So we're now able to net that total out, and that is a huge impact on our budget. Out of district tuition has also gone down. That's the tuition we pay for students who we are not able to educate here, and we educate in special education schools outside of Monomoy. And that number just fluctuates with the student needs, and that is down this year. It's not really a savings, but our high school debt is also down, just a schedule of payments. It goes down each year, so that's down $55,000. And we have a small saving on IT equipment, which is we have one less lease this year, but that will be added in future years. But those things help to offset, those green circles help to offset all the red circles. And so that's it. That's a kind of my run through of everything that's influencing the budget this year, the big ticket items, and that's how we end up at 46.5 million budget and 28.9 for Harwich and 10.3 for Chatham. So the next steps. So as I mentioned, there's a small amendment to our foundation enrollment that may be required. So with the new assessment methodology, we need to have our foundation enrollment broken out by grade, and the state only issues it the total numbers for each town, and we do a calculation based on some of their information, and I'm just getting that final. We're out by 1 at the moment, so I'm just waiting for the state to confirm our numbers by grade, because it makes a difference to how we divide up the minimum low contribution between the schools. So I think it'll make a very small change, if any, to the numbers, but that's still to be finalised. Also, the state draft budget, as I mentioned, we may receive another iteration of the draft budget. I did hear that transportation reimbursement might go up, so that would be good. We'd get more money back, and that would help reduce assessments, but numbers can also go down, unfortunately, so we kind of wait for that. So we are presenting to the Harwich Select Board on February 26th, then the Chatham Select Board on the 27th. We're also presenting to the Chatham FinCom on the afternoon of the 27th. And then we'll have another vote on the budget on March 14th, when in theory that's the final vote. And then we give it to the towns, and it all goes swimmingly. Sometimes we end up having votes beyond that time, but maybe not this time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Michael. The last page you gave us with that school choice tuition,
Yeah,
for those of us who've been here a long, long time, this is such great news.
yeah,
Because it's, how does one say it? If you build it, they will come.
yeah,
Well, a twist on that is, if we build it, they'll stay.
yes,
And it took us 7 or 8 or 9 years, but those of us who were around for the building committee and the gamble that we'd heard with so many people leaving us, going to Nauset, et cetera. And all of a sudden, we have almost a cut by half, almost $500,000 isn't going out. The only saving grace, as that was coming, we were equaling it by having school choice kids come to us to balance that off. Well, now we're in the plus balance, and again, those of us who are here watching this and crossing our fingers, hoping that that would happen in the way of kids choosing. And it appears that it's starting to show that they're staying with us. So not only is the saving in money in dollars, because every year we're getting some sort of a percentage increase just by the act of living and going to school.
yeah.
But we're seeing our kids stay, which is terrific news to me.
And I will add to that, just as you allude to, so we do receive money for students coming in, and that has not gone down. It fluctuates a little bit, it's down a little, but it's not down anything like as much as the school choice out is going. So it's not just a factor, because initially I thought, is it just a factor of enrollment? Because enrollment's down, school choice should go down. But it's not. We are keeping a greater proportion of our students and still attracting other students. So that's good. Long may that last.
Any other comments?
Any members of the public? I'm curious.
That'll be after.
Oh, okay.
Are we good? We ready for that?
Yeah,
I'm good.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So, moving right along to
Thank you
public
very much.
comment.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Weatherup. I'm the president of the Monomoy Regional Education Association. Oh, hello to everybody. Regarding the budget presented tonight, it's very promising to hear that the numbers have improved and we've retained many of the support positions that were previously funded by ESSER. It also retains 2 administrators that were added last year to the tune of roughly $250,000. I want to remind everybody that those numbers also include a reduction in the number of teachers at the elementary and middle school. This renorming also means an increase in class sizes across most of the grade levels, especially at Harwich Elementary School. For several years now, many have stood here and talked about the increased demands on teachers due to the social emotional needs of the students as well as the rigorous demands of the curriculum. How are teachers supposed to meet each individual child's needs with even more students in their classes? Is there a plan in the budget to put an assistant in every class to support these increased numbers? If we want to meet the needs of the whole child and achieve the goals outlined in the portrait of a graduate, it is short-sighted to think that increasing class sizes and laying off teachers for the youngest, neediest students will achieve these goals. Food for thought moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Anyone else for public comment? Charles?
Charles Gruska, 6 T-Berry Ave, Harwich. Tonight, I speak as a member of the Monomoy Regional High School School Council. As you know, the School Council, one of its primary functions is to help formulate the budget for the school that it represents. And this week we had our own budget hearing to budget review, reviewing the information as it stood at its most recent point, primarily presented by me since I've been closest to the situation among the council in attending and following the meetings. And at that meeting, there was consensus on a number of items to the budget. And I submitted to you an email late last night. I know it's last minute. You probably haven't had a chance to look at it. I'm not going to repeat everything in that email tonight, but I ask you to, if you haven't, to take a look at it as well. I would appreciate that. The first area we reached consensus on was that, a most important goal of this budget should be to adequately fund negotiated agreements that make Monomoy salaries competitive with the other Cape districts. We think that's an important, critical survival skill for the quality of our district. We're seeing more and more, at least at the high school level, I would imagine at the other levels as well, difficulty in landing the best qualified candidates, even getting qualified candidates for our positions. And so right up front, we see that as a critical goal, and we're very happy to see that the budget deals with that. And the budget takes that under consideration and calls for that type of negotiated settlement. And we hope it can be worked out satisfactorily. Second, the new position of Dean of Students, which was requested by the high school administration, should be included in the FY25 budget. That's the consensus of our school council with our responsibility for the budget. And in that regard, something that I can speak on personally is, having had 24 years of experience in the role of a school principal. A couple of you on the committee have sat in that role as well. You might want to disagree with what I have to say, but what I have to say is that in that role, I came to appreciate the fact the first most important thing in a school is a safe and orderly environment. And if you don't have a safe and orderly environment, nothing else really works well or works as well as it should in the school. I became a principal because I was working as a counselor in a school that did not have that kind of environment. I couldn't do my job, and I couldn't see other teachers and staff members doing the jobs that they were paid to do as well as they could either. The new strategic plan, some of you have worked on that. Goal 2 of Pillar 3 is a safe and inclusive school environment under the category of being and wellness. The administration plays a critical role. That's their responsibility, and I came to appreciate that that was my most important role as a principal, was to maintain that safe and orderly environment, and that's dealing with discipline, and that became a total focus. The data that you received at your budget workshop shows, that we received as a school council, shows that the conduct referrals have been skyrocketing at the high school. And that's not Monomoy alone. That's every school that I know about. And that's the situation in our society today. In the same time, changes to the Massachusetts general laws are requiring an implementation of disciplinary procedures alternative to students missing direct instruction, except in the cases of drugs, weapons, or assault. That makes the discipline process extremely time-consuming. It's not a simple matter of this is what you did, this is the consequence, and we move on. There's a requirement now to really do a thorough, what I call counseling process. Now, I always did that in my job. I was a trained counselor for 8 years before I became a principal. It was natural for me to take on that role. But I can tell you that discipline became so all-consuming. And one of the offsets of that was you didn't see me in the classroom very much. You didn't see me around the school very much. My teachers, I used to give a birthday card to students. They told me, why don't you come and deliver them in person? At least it'll give you an excuse to get out into the classrooms and see what's going on. So that's a good process, what the state is requiring, except for the fact that it's kind of handcuffed administrators and taken away consequences. I used to apply the consequence and then do the therapy. Now you do the counseling, and you may or may not get the result, and it may require many, many applications before you're allowed to administer those consequences. And what we know at the high school and the council is that this is taking up most of the time of all 3 administrators, and it's leaving little time for other important responsibilities. So that's a real concern. Worked with some of you on the portrait of a graduate, worked with some of you on the strategic plan process, developing core values. Some of the mindsets and skills that are in our portrait of a graduate that we want to see in every graduate of the school system really deal with the discipline process. Our students, many of our students are not demonstrating those skills and mindsets, and the discipline process is one of the processes that they'll have to go through in a good way, and that's what makes that process so important. If they're going to develop some of those skills and mindsets, some of those core values for respect integrity, responsibility, empathy for their fellow classmates. So in the strategic plan, I've looked and now I haven't seen we haven't gotten yet as far as seeing the actual game plan of how all the goals and objectives will be carried out. But as I look at all three of the main pillars of the strategic plan, there is going to have to be a lot of responsibility on the building administrators to make that plan work, and that plan is meant to drive, first pillar is to drive the portrait of a graduate. So we need our building administrators to have the time and opportunity to be out there in the middle of the flow of what's going on instructionally, what's going on in things that are being implemented or not implemented. There's going to be a lot of change required. There's going to be a lot of training required. But the responsibility, I imagine, is going to fall on building principals within their building to see that the portrait of the graduates is being carried out, to see that the strategic plan and many of the specific goals, and I think when you see it, you'll see building principals as building administrators as the responsibility agent or one of them for the objectives in that plan. So that's the Dean of Students, and that's a rationale as to why the school council feels that that position is so critical and should be included in the budget. And the third area is the area of the science, supplies and materials that are not in science and technology resource upgrades that are not in the budget at the current time, $30,000. The science MCAS is being revised to focus more on application and deeper learning. It's a critical part of the portrait of a graduate. If you one whole dimension is critical thinking skills. I see people have participated in that process. The technology in our science classrooms at the high school has not been updated since the building opened. Students are using equipment that's no longer used in both college and career environments. Teachers are relying on video-based science activities, and that's not going to be helpful to the kind of hands-on real-life activity that they're going to be measured on MCAS. The council feels that our students deserve to be learning utilizing state-of-the-art technology and materials. I don't know if the other high schools on the Cape have some of these materials, but we want to be there in the leadership role. School council does, and I know you do as well. So those are things that we hope when you continue your discussion on the budget, starting with tonight, that you will revisit in those areas. Now, I know you have a big concern about finances and fiscal responsibility to the towns. I don't see these items as budget busters. I've done some calculations. If the Dean of Students position were added into the budget as was presented tonight, it would make up 0.19% of the total budget. If you added the science materials on top of that, those science added to the new amount, adding on the Dean of Students, then the science materials would be 0.06% of the budget. The assessments would increase minimally, as far as I can see, between Harwich and Chatham. I did some rough figures, but Mr. McMillan could certainly do a more accurate job than I, for sure. I'm not taking his job, but it would drive the assessments for Harwich into the low 5% increase range. It would move the assessments for Chatham into low 6% increase range. In fact, if you put everything on that list that's not included in the budget and added it into the budget, it would move the assessment for Harwich still below 6% increase and still below 7% increase for Chatham. Personally, as a resident taxpayer now speaking, of Harwich, I just feel that this budget increase of just 5%, and that's what adding those two positions would bring the budget increase to just over 5%, maybe 5.2%. I think it's a great bargain in this time of inflation. When you consider what we are paying and how much more we are paying for so many of the fundamentals and essentials, I just have to commend, first of all, the administration and the school committee for a budget that would come in at this level with all that it accomplishes. Like to know more in your discussions. I think public would like to hear more about the point that was brought up about class sizes. My assumption is normalizing class sizes and still leaves us with very reasonable class sizes that fall within the district norms and within the policy norms of the school committee, but that would be good to clarify. But if you keep those class sizes, you're including all the ESSER positions that were formerly funded by federal funds. All the programs and services remain in this budget. You have competitive salaries that you're taking care of in this budget. You're adding a section of integrated preschool into the district. You are, according to tonight, we're dealing with increased costs in health and benefits and all. Those things, it's not new items that are taking up the bulk of the increase in the budget or the increase in the assessments. It's not that list of needs that have been identified as new needs. It's just existing needs in a time when what did they say, inflation 33% or something in the last 2 to 3 years. I think this is a great bargain budget with those positions that the school council would like to see added into it. I've actually talked to some people who have no connection with anybody in the school in my age bracket out in the community who thinks it's a great bargain budget. I think that it's a budget that the voters would find favorable. And as I said a couple of months ago when I spoke of public comment, please give the voters a chance to decide. Tell the voters what the schools need and let us as the voters decide. Some of the comments I'm making tonight, I'm very conscious of the fact there's a member of the Harwich Finance Committee in the room, so it's for many people's benefits. And one of the things that I know is that support for the school, pride in the school system is growing among the population that do not have children in the school or any relative connection to the school. That's my sense. You see it, as I've said to you before. Look at the audience at the concerts, at the plays, at the school productions. Look at the large number of people who have no connection. They're taxpayers. They're paying the bill, and they're loving coming to see the product of what they're paying for. And taking great pride in they're coming into a building that they see as what their tax dollars paid for. They're like it. The Chatham Harwich Newcomers, which has over 700 members, they now advertise. They put out an email blast to the membership, to all the membership for every concert event, every dramatic production. It's the best show in town for the best price. And they even have their own seating areas and components. There is a lot of support for the schools. When I went to the Harwich Board of Selectmen back in the fall with Ms. Henderson and Superintendent Mr. McMillan, we were talking about something else. We were talking about the funding formula. But every one of the members on that board commented on how they know we've got a great thing going in Monomoy, in the school district. They made those comments. And so they're on record, and they're on video, and can be used to quote back to people when they say that. You get a tremendous support at the Finance Committee last year when you presented with a budget that you really were concerned about, because you really took a leap of courage and you presented to the community what we needed. Except, by the way, for one item, and it came from the high school, the furniture, for the worn-out furniture. We still don't have it. It's not in the budget, and we're at the point where we're beginning to throw away some of the items because they're on where, and we're not even saying, well, that should be in the budget, because we keep being told somehow that'll be taken care of. But you see what happens when you don't put something in the budget that was wanted. And one member of the committee, I remember last year, said, why don't we go for the whole thing? Why don't we put it on? You would have gotten it. We would have gotten it. We would have had new furniture in this room if that had happened. So I'm asking you again to remember last year, learn from experience. Yes, this is a higher percentage increase, but yes, we're still in raging inflation, and I'd like to be paying only 5 and 6% more for groceries, gasoline, and everything else that impinges in my family budget. I think this is great. I think you can sell this budget. I think it sells itself in this day and age in a community that really prides itself in the school system and wants to maintain that. So, one of the main, if those of you that worked on strategic plan, one of our 5 core values, as you're going to see officially when the whole plan is presented to you, is courage. And I ask that we see courage, as we did last year, from the school committee on down. Let's start it with the school committee and work it all the way down to the system. Let the community experience that. And give us a chance. If I and my fellow voters at town meeting vote it down, it's not your fault. You told us what we need. You go back to the table and you give us what we want and we'll get what we pay for. And that's on us, not on you. So those are my comments. I appreciate the chair giving me the time to expound as I can do so very well, as you all know. Thank you, and all the best in your efforts.
Thank you,
Thank
Charles.
you.
Thank you, Charles.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Goley. I feel like we just need a mic drop and I'll just say ditto and be out. But I'm on the school council with Charles, and so I'm here as a parent representative. I have 3 kids at Monomoy High School. We were one of those families that school choice for my oldest son for special programming out, and he's now back in the school. We're very happy at the high school. Everything's going well. And at our meeting the other day, I was just so blown away by the programs that are happening at the high school for our kids. And I was not a principal for 24 years like Charles was, but I did go to principal school, and I quickly decided that the principal job was really unmanageable and undoable, and like I would never want to be a principal. So I think we're very lucky to have the dedicated humans we have here shepherding our schools and our students. So when they ask for things, I pay attention when they ask for support. And so I would just like to reiterate the support for the Dean of Students in particular, when they were sharing about what they're doing and the restorative practices that they're working with. That takes so much time. And like Charles said, they're not able to do other aspects of their job to the degree they would like because they're spending a lot of time with these restorative practices. I'm also part of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. And I'm not speaking for the whole committee because we haven't talked about this, but this is very in line with the kinds of things that we would also be looking for in happening in schools. So I just wanted to add that in. Thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. Sure. And it's a challenging course to get through there.
Hi, I'm Mark Kelleher. I'm on the Finance Committee. I'm talking for the Finance Committee, but also for myself. When you make your presentations to the town, what I found very helpful a few years ago or last year is to do a comparison to other towns. I know we were getting some pushback from the Select Board in Harwich until I, on my own, went to several other towns and basically made the case that the increase that Monomoy was proposing was a bargain compared to other towns. So I would do that for your upcoming presentations, and you may find that 0.5% you may need for the additional faculty would be a lot easier sell. The other thing is just a small matter. I've read in the Globe about the reading programs, and surprisingly how some of these high-income towns don't have high-quality reading programs. And I've shared it with Charles. I just hope that you have a high-quality reading program. I was a reading teacher, and I know how important it is for kids in those early grades to get a good start and get up to grade. So, thank you. I'm sorry, would you like me to speak as long as Charles?
Yes.
So, go ahead, give me the mic. Sorry,
Thank you,
Charles.
All right. Anyone else? Do we have any final comments? Okay. So I am looking for a motion to adjourn. We will have a short, very short adjournment, and then we will come back to start our regular meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So we will adjourn at 7:01 and return in about 5 minutes.
We have 4 minutes? Doesn't sound fun.
Good evening and welcome back. We are now going to begin our regular school committee meeting for Thursday, February 8th. I will call it to order at 7:08 p.m. And next on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from January 11th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay.
Who was the first, I'm sorry? Was it Jess? I'm sorry.
Jess.
Oh, what is it? Oh, I moved.
Oh, I think, yeah, I apologize.
Tina,
Thank you.
yeah, and Terry.
You're too close, I can't see.
Sorry. We're one and the same. We're too close.
Okay, excellent public comment for our regular meeting. Seeing none, we will move right along to reports and
Hold on. Charles, was that you jumping up?
Oh,
again?
I'm sorry, Charles.
I'm like, he's just closing a folder, Tina. That's what I.
I'm sorry.
It's all moving way too fast.
Every minute matters.
Charles Gruska, 6 T-Berry Ave, Harwich. The last meeting, you passed the new policy on student searches, et cetera. And just a reminder that the students who helped bring that proposal for policy changes forward, one of the big things, and they presented to the high school council, an important part outside of the policy was the need for greater education at the middle school and elementary levels in the area of health, and both students and parents on all these issues related to vaping, edibles, THC edibles, even devices. We heard from the health coordinator, it's in the new standard, that what are going to be the new health standards, but it seems that there are difficulties integrating sometimes all of these different health concepts at those grade levels and working them in. So hearing that concern, I just asked the committee to please stay on top of that and hopefully ask for some follow-up or whatever on how is that going. Is there a way to work that in? Is there a way that may take greater importance over some other things that we already have if it can't stand on its own? Or can we bring in other resources and videotape some things, some classes for kids to watch, not something new else for teachers to take on, but I don't want that to get lost in the shuffle. Those kiddos won't follow up on it, but they really emphasized with us that was really important, because they said the problem is already existent and full-blown at the high school. It starts in the middle school and younger, and they told us we're not getting enough in our health studies about that particular area. So I thought it was important to bring that to your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. All right, so now we will move right on to reports and discussion, and the first item on the agenda is the Monomoy Regional High School All-State Festival trip to Boston Symphony Hall rehearsal and performance. And Ms. Rose Richards?
Hello. I didn't bring a band with me this time. I'm looking for your blessing, I guess, to bring two girls who successfully auditioned for the Massachusetts All-State Chorus. Pre-COVID, it used to be done in Boston. Now it's quite an undertaking, being it's students from all over the state, and probably includes a total of 450 kids involved in 4 different ensembles. Very excited to have 2 singers in the chorus this year. They're doing it this year out. Post-COVID, it turned into a 1-day rehearsal all day on Friday, and then bring them back up to Boston so they can perform at Symphony Hall, on the stage at Symphony Hall. Last year, I didn't know 495 went so far up the state. I can't remember where the day of rehearsal was. I'm asking if I could take these 2 girls on Thursday afternoon to Worcester, which is where the rehearsal day will be. Parents are fine with us getting a hotel room. The 2 girls would be in one hotel room, myself in the one next door. Because I furnished you with mileage and the time, and I can only imagine what it would be like at commuter hour on either end of the rehearsal to get from Harwich to Worcester. So I'm asking permission for us to be able to go to Worcester on Thursday night, spend Thursday, spend Friday, and then I would bring them down to Boston. On both of those mornings, we need to be checking in at 8 a.m. for what is a 9 to 5 rehearsal, and then the Boston Symphony Hall one is 9 until the 1 o'clock concert. And it is you can only imagine how intense the rehearsal is, let alone the length of it, but it's pretty awesome because it's super talented, skilled musicians with a pretty amazing conductor every single year. And we've had kids, I think in the 100 years I've taught in this community, 22 years, there have been 20 years that we had kids in All-State, which is pretty cool.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Thank you.
Do we have questions? Ms. Gaines?
I do have a question. I just have a comment as someone who drives in and out of Boston a lot, and to Worcester.
Yes.
I will support this whenever everybody's ready to vote.
I am also a very confident city driver,
Good.
all the things, yes.
Any other questions, comments? Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the field trip request form as submitted by Rosemarie Richard.
I would second that.
Awesome.
Any discussion? I just have to say, thank you for the field trip request form. It's very nice to see that.
You're
As we are
welcome.
planning for a field trip.
You're welcome.
Okay, all those in favor?
Awesome.
Opposed? Abstained? Great.
All right,
Have a great
thank you so
time.
much.
Come back and tell us how they did.
Oh, yes. It'll be amazing.
All right, moving right along to the exciting MSBA application. Mr. McMillan?
Oh, look, it's Michael.
Oh, I'm back. So I have a couple of things on this evening. This is the first one, and it's about the Massachusetts School Building Authority application, which I mentioned in the last presentation. So the process for applying to the MSBA for a loan for a grant is to fill out a form online and submit that, but they only accept your application if they have a vote from the school committee supporting the application. And so that's why I'm here this evening. So the application's in your packet, I think. Is it? Yep. And also the motion, which is required to go alongside it. So as I mentioned, the good news is I think our odds have improved significantly with the confirmation of the age of that part of the roof. Whether that makes the difference in the end, I don't know. That'll depend on the number of applications they get and how the age of those and so on. But yeah, I'm feeling much more enthused, and normally I'm filling this out and I'm like, oh, it's such a waste of time. But then I was like, oh, wait a minute, maybe it's not. So it'll be great if we get the money.
All right.
So jazzed up.
Any questions? Do I have a motion? Ms. Seabright-Long?
I move to approve the MSBA application, including the motion provided in our packet.
I would second that.
Do you want me to read it?
Is that okay? Do you want?
Yeah, I mean,
I can read the motion.
I would read it.
Okay.
Just to be. Just so we
Strike
don't-
my motion.
Do you withdraw your second?
I just don't want to mess with
Terry?
MSBA. Normally I'm
Okay.
all for that, but MSBA are sticklers.
So would you rather me just read the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. I move to approve the following motion for the Massachusetts School Building Authority Accelerated Repair Program Update. Resolved, having convened in an open meeting on February 8th of 2024, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the School Committee of Monomoy Regional School District, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, have voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated February 8th, 2024, for the Monomoy Regional Middle School located at 425 Kroll Road, Chatham, Mass. 02633, which describes and explains the following deficiencies in the priority category for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
Sorry, can you just say that again?
Very good,
I did
Michael.
mess up one word. There should be some more commas in there.
That was amazing. That was really impressive.
Second,
I would second and third and fourth.
Thank you,
any
Terry.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained?
Thanks
All
very
right.
much.
Don't go too far.
I hope there's another one.
All right, next on our agenda is the town meeting articles.
So this is just for information. I just wanted to make sure you were aware of where we are because we're talking to both towns about including articles on their warrants for their upcoming town meetings. And I don't want you to see it from there before you'd heard it from us. So there's two in particular that I wanted to highlight. One is for a request for funds from their PEG funds, they're called. They're essentially monies that the towns get from cable companies, the cable TV companies, and those funds can support the operational costs of Channel 22, and so we're requesting funds for technology should the new press box, or when the new press box is completed, so we can put in technology in there so that they can, Channel 22 can film and make announcements and so on from the press box. So we've sent this off. I haven't heard anything back from Harwich yet, but Chatham thought it wouldn't be a problem to put it in their town meeting articles. And we've got a meeting coming up with both towns at the end of next week, and we'll confirm all that, but they are aware, so fingers crossed.
Okay. Ms. Gage?
Just a clarification, because I think this is always in the town meeting. I seem to recall, right, Harwich? So is there something different that we're doing this year?
So,
Okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
so the difference is that it's not normally this much money. Because we've had it now, this is the third, so we had one in 21 and 23 and 24. We didn't have one in 22, I don't believe. So 21, they replaced a whole bunch of equipment. 23, we purchased some additional, but it was much less. It was like $40-something thousand. But this one's so much more, coming in almost $180,000. So it's just a bigger ticket item.
So all right, so this will replace, so what you're proposing is in the place of what we would normally see, basically, is what you're, so it's not, so it's the same article, it's just different.
There isn't a standard article. It's been different every time.
Oh, huh. Okay. That's interesting. All right.
So there is, yeah, because I wondered if, when I first got here, I was like, so is there a standard? Like, do we do this every year? But there hasn't been as long as I've been here, and it wasn't before.
So we're just seeing it and it looks
But it's
similar.
But we're just
Oh, is that
asking,
what it is? Yeah, 'cause
we're
I-
just asking a lot. You know, we're asking, so we've asked for, in the last 4 years, we've asked, you know, there's been 3 requests, so including this year.
Okay.
So it's just, we're asking a lot.
Okay, so it's just with the amount. Oh, the only reason I ask is I've had people ask me questions about the regular one that shows
Yeah.
up. So I just was wondering.
So this is additional, so there isn't, so the only regular costs we have are for the Channel 2 manager. So that's it. So the Channel 2, that's the only kind of ongoing regular
Okay.
cost we have for Channel 22,
All right,
which is a
gotcha.
stipend that goes to member staff here. That's included in the budget. The towns may use PEG funds to pay for that and help offset their budget. That might be what you're alluding to, or you're referring to.
Yeah.
But we don't have like a standard, we need $180,000 a year article. This is a one-off for this particular equipment.
Okay. I think I understand.
But it might be worth, you know, and I have spoken to Mr. Cass, Steve Cass, who oversees the program here at the high school, about whether or not we should have, you know, just like a standard budget for the Channel 22 that's included in as a request to the towns, but we haven't yet, because we keep having these bigger ticket items to request.
Mr.
Just
Russell?
reflecting on Tina's point, for years I too thought that there was an article from the committing the cable companies to give $50,000 to the school system.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And the school system's action on that would be to identify needs equal to that amount of money. So that, prior to you even
Yeah,
arriving,
that must
that's,
have been, that's definitely prior to me,
yes, yeah.
but I would, let's do that. I like the sound of that. Although, to be honest, we've requested more than $50,000 on average since I got here, because the first one was, I think, like $300,000.
Yeah.
And it was nothing in 22, but 40 something last year, and now 170. So we've increased, if it was, say, 50,000, we've increased the average that we're requesting.
Even
But
better.
Yeah. So So, yeah, so that may well be the case, but that's not since I've been here. That is part of the challenge, there's been so much turnover. I mean, there's not so much for us, but in both towns now, we've had a new person in Chatham, and we've had new people in Harwich, and some of this standard stuff gets dropped, which is frustrating.
Any other questions, comments?
And then the other article, just which I've already mentioned, was to look at the possibility of issuing debt for the middle school siding and trim. So the process of issuing debt is that the school committee would have to vote, and then within 60 days, after you've informed the select board, they have 60 days to disapprove of the debt. So technically, under the law, they don't have to approve it. They just can't disapprove it. If they disapprove it, then it's cancelled, and we can start the process again. If you've voted for it and then they haven't disapproved it, then it goes forward. However, we're suggesting that the towns sort of proactively include an article in their town meetings, just so that everybody's aware of what's happening, and it's a full transparency that this project is envisaged. So again, this is how the towns decide to pay for it and fund it is up to them. So we'll have a conversation with the town administrators and finance directors next week, and we'll get into more detail on it.
Yeah, so just one clarification on the second one. So this is what you were proposing to both towns, and
Yep.
then will it be up to the town administrator, town manager to rewrite this? Or is this, I'm just kind of wondering.
This is not an article.
Oh, okay.
This is
all
just
right,
for, this is literally just for you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the town articles, so I do have, so since, just like yesterday, I met with bond counsel, our bond counsel who we pay, who help us to issue debt, and they provide all the wording for the town meeting articles, for select board and for school committee votes, so that will come.
Okay, all right.
Providing the towns are happy with us going forward with this, proposal, then we will come back to you with a vote, much like the MSBA language, will be specific language for you to approve the borrowing, and then that would go on to select boards and their specific town meeting warrant article language, which bond council requires to approve
got
debt.
it. Thank you.
Okay. Moving right along to our FY25 budget hearing recap presentation. And are we voting tonight? Do you need our vote
Yes,
again
I
tonight?
would like your votes.
Okay.
All right, so I'll be
Just
super
confirming.
quick. I have them. Okay, so I will go through this quickly. So I'm just going to highlight, unless you have questions, I want to highlight the differences from your last vote on the budget. So as I mentioned, if I get upside down, no. There we go. So this is the budget that was presented this evening, 46.5 million, an increase of just over $2 million, 4.8%. So the big differences since we last presented are these here. So, and these are all green, these are all good. So 260,000 reduction in school choice. Health insurance was budgeted in the first draft of the budget, we had 10% assumptions. Thanks to Jackie and the finance committee, because I was going to put it in at 6%. And they said, don't put it in at 6%, Michael, put it in at 10%. And we did. And so we saved it. So we now are in a much better position. If you don't listen to me, that's the moral of the story, because this would have been a red circle. So
You see the roof and the siding in the middle school's getting done too.
yeah, there you go. I know.
I'm making progress over 8 years.
And so roof and the siding, if we go out and borrow for that instead of doing a piecemeal project, it actually reduces our budget, because we were going to do $300,000 worth of one-off repairs. Instead, the debt payment wouldn't be more than $250,000 based on our numbers that we have at the moment. So that saves us another $50,000. Barnstable County retirement came in. That's the amount of money we pay into pensions for people who aren't part of maths teachers' retirement. And that was down $40,000, which was just good news. And then I went through every line and just found any savings we could, and that would just us another $16,000. So that's all for the good. This still includes the budget requests that we've talked about before. Still includes a capital and debt plan that we've already just seen. And then, so in addition to the overall budget coming down, the state funding was a little higher. So the biggest numbers were so this is, all the different other things that help to fund the budget, and the biggest differences from the last vote were transportation aid, still down $48,000, but I had it down like $100 and something thousand. So that's added a $60,000, it was actually almost $100,000 improvement in transportation, and $60,000 in charter school aid, which I had is just about being level with last year, and actually it's up $70,000. So that's good. So those then, so they don't reduce our budget, but they reduce the assessments. And so that's what gets us down to these assessments with 28.9 million and 10.3 million, an increase of 4.9% and 6.2%. And then we've already seen that slide. And then this is, you don't need to, this is the actual calculation that gets down to our assessments. So, all things being equal, if that sounds okay, that's what we would like a motion to approve the budget and assessments as presented.
Okay. Any discussion or questions for Michael?
I was wondering if there was any interest, since listening to the high school council talk about the dean of students position, if it might be worthwhile or of interest to have Jen Police come and just talk about the position a little bit more.
I'm sure we can ask her to do that at a future meeting, absolutely. Okay, any other questions, comments?
I would just agree with Jessica about having more information from Jen, and especially the other things that Charles mentioned.
So, and one thing to add to that is that not so much on the Dean of Students position, but on the, like the science equipment, and also on the high school furniture. So those are sort of one-off purchases, and we do have a surplus in the budget this year because the school choice numbers are down, and so we can use those funds to make some of those purchases. So hopefully we'll get the chairs replaced soon, and we can also invest in some additional science equipment, because those are one-off, and we have these one-off funds that we can use to help fund those. So,
great, thank you.
Mr. Russell?
Madam Chair, just a question, if we wait to have Jen or whoever else come in, we can't vote on the budget then?
Well, I think because this is a draft budget, we could vote on this budget right now, and maybe we can have Jen
Adjust
come
it.
to a meeting in between this meeting and when we have to do the final vote. Is that correct?
So that would be great, yeah. So because you can vote, you could vote a new budget after we voted this one. So you could vote this
You
one
can
now.
increase the budget.
You can,
At
yeah.
some point, it's March that you can't increase it.
So it's actually after, it's after the towns have voted, you can't increase the budget, but during the budget process, we can increase it. And there may be other things which will help reduce the assessments and may inform that decision as well.
Okay. Does that feel okay?
That's okay. I just make one comment. And Charles, much of what you say, you'd have my support on. On the other hand, for hours we spent as a school committee going over and over what we thought in value to a balance of the town taxes, what was still a fair and very doable budget. If this were not the case, we better be ready for another school council, the middle school, to come in and say, you left out $30,000. Sure. And we'd say, well, please come back again. And personally, I know everything we're told by the leadership, the principals, has merit.
Yeah.
And so at some point, we made a decision eliminating 3 or 4 things here. So I find it, just keep that in mind, folks. I have no guilt in my mind that we have overlooked to any great degree that there would be judgments to say, in my mind, I'd like to see this now, but I know I feel better by saying, I'm making this up next year, to put that on the budget and insist after being told this first year. That, to me, is not that shocking. The other comment I do make, I think Madam President made a comment that class size has dramatically increased. by the numbers that I've looked at over the past week, even though we have such a tremendous number of 18 and 19 per class, in my memory, I don't know a school system, other than maybe private schools, that have those numbers. So for the past year or two, there have been class sizes with 14 children, 15 children in them. And I praise that. I think that's fantastic. But at some point, and the point is, we're pressed between students being shrunk from our district, projecting the next year, and what do we do by that? Or we keep all the teachers and let those numbers get to a point where they're well below 19. And personally, I feel, and I'm too old, but in the old days, I can recall 25 is a number that most of us dealt with as being okay, not great. And we lived with that. Now, was it okay? No. But at some point financially, what I've been living with here, and I was so proud of it, that we've had class sizes that were the pride of Cape Cod. So I wouldn't say that what we've done in the past couple of months has dramatically increased that. And if it did at some point, we could take a look, or it was necessary for some reason as far as RIF.
So, two things. Terry, I hear what you're saying about the other school councils coming forward, but if we look at the things that have been taken out, the only thing that has to do with an elementary school request at this point anyway is the project, the courtyard project at Chatham Elementary School. Otherwise, the elementary schools are represented above in things that we've already focused on. Also, I will take respectful issue with class size, that Nauset, certainly the elementary schools, had very low class size numbers. And so even though the class sizes here we're proud of that, no need to pat ourselves on the back, because Nauset was doing it in their elementary schools for a long time. And of course, we can go back and forth philosophically about, is class size good for small class size, good for kids? Do we want a larger class size? But having been a teacher and a principal, 25 and 28 kids in a classroom was never okay. Of course, we also, the way we disciplined kids was totally different as well. So there are so many other there's so many other issues that impacted having 28 kids in the class, and that worked. I taught a second grade once with 52 7-year-olds in it. And guess what? They never moved, you never sat in a circle, and they were adorable, but it took you the first 3 weeks just to learn everybody's name, let alone the family. So I don't want to say, it was fine for me, because that's not how the world is. Even as in classrooms, it's changed. It changes all the time. So I have to continue to be a supporter of the lower class size.
And if I can so with the district for a long time now has had a target of keeping class sizes within 19 plus or minus 2 for middle and high school, and 18 plus or minus 1 for the elementary school. That's still there. So that's not gone away. But what's changed is the number of students has gone down. So actually, historically, we've always been fighting to keep that down, but actually we're now in a position where it's getting lower than the target ratio in some places. I mean, it's always, it's challenging when the numbers get small, because, you can have a class which is either, I'm just making numbers up, you see you have a cohort of 24 kids, you then have either one class of 24 or 2 of 12, which are too low. So there's those sort of challenges to deal with, but within that, we are still aiming for that 18 plus or minus 1 at the elementary level. So, we've not changed our commitment to those class sizes.
Ms. Everett-Long.
Thank you, Michael. A couple things, and now I think I've lost my train of thought, but I agree with Terry. We've had four finance subcommittee meetings. I think the first finance subcommittee meeting, we drilled into class size numbers specifically. I really wish I had my notes here, because I drilled into class size numbers in that, marked up a page. And as much as, I think when we hear cut teacher, cut position, it's not always a physical position, it's shifting someone from one to the other. And I also think that when we hear that, we assume it's automatically going to increase class sizes. But if you look at our history, we're maintaining the same class sizes within 1 to 2 children. I mean, if that's what the numbers show. If I'm not getting the correct graph, then we can talk about it, but that's what my numbers are showing, you know, two kids in a classroom. And I'm not saying that 2 kids does not make a difference, but we're nowhere near 25 to 28 kids a classroom. And based on the number of kids that are leaving the district, we never will be. That's just not the trend we're going for. So that's not even something I'm concerned about. We, you know, wholeheartedly have the integrity of our district and equitable class sizes at the forefront more than I've ever seen. And I think some aren't as conscientiously doing it as we are. I think it's just the way their district is, such as Nauset. We're purposefully doing it and calculatively doing it. So I think it's great that Nauset has small class sizes, but we're doing it on purpose. And I think my feedback based on the finance subcommittee meetings, you know, we've brought this budget forward 4 times with this same table in it, with the same things. We're saying these are the things we're not going to go for this year. These are the things we are, and this is why. It just seems like I want to bang my head on the table because now all of a sudden at the 4th time we've presented it, now we've decided we want to put it back in again. And that's not that there aren't good arguments for every single thing. And I think we have this same, you know, conversation every year. And last year Scotty said it, you know, let's just go for it. Let's just go for it. And yeah, we can just go for it. But at some point when you look, you know, as a finance subcommittee, when we look at each item, we have to be responsible and fiscally responsible. You know, Dean of Students, I don't need Jen Police to come back and do a presentation on the importance of that for our district. I think she was clear on what the need is. And it's not that I don't support it. That's not why it's in this, on the bottom of the graph, not going into the budget. It's not going into the budget. In my opinion, we just took on 2 assistant curriculum positions, huge positions, which we had to fight for because we felt it was in the best interest of the district. That was a big tag. And I think a lot of the conversation around supporting that, I mean, there were various reasons. You know, Robin can tell you from the first day I met Robin before she was principal of elementary school, I had a meeting with her before she started her first day talking about why there were 2 different curriculums in kindergarten. I'm like, why isn't one kid getting tools in the mind and the other one getting the other? So I'm a huge proponent of bringing the curriculum back together. It's supposed to help our teachers and support them. Those individuals are supposed to support our teachers. And it's also supposed to take something away from our principals and our assistant principals so that they can go back to being principals and assistant principals. And yes, the Dean of Students may be something we need, but we haven't given these positions a year to work to even know if maybe in a year or 2 years, maybe we won't need the Dean of Students position. I don't know. But we can't just keep adding on and being so top heavy without giving what we did the year prior time to work. And I do think that there are rising concerns for the need for a dean of students, and there are certain mental health issues that we have, and substance abuse, and all kinds of things that are growing at a capacity that maybe we can't keep up with, and we can justify that maybe. But for me, that's one of the reasons why Dean of Students isn't in my put it in this year list, because we're still grappling with what we did last year. You know, we looked at the strategic plan, we have faith in our leaders for that, and we took some money away to help with that additional professional development. We're being stewards of supporting that the best way that we can, but we also have team already on staff that are capable and are going to be fantastic at it. And then, you know, as far as the CES Shark Yard, I can't really speak to that. It doesn't flag anything for me. I think it would be wonderful, and maybe we can be more creative with it, and maybe down the line. But I just, being in the finance subcommittee and having this presented to us, now I think it's 4 times. It's a little frustrating, but we've also had compelling arguments and compelling discussions, and this was our opportunity to hear from the public tonight, and I appreciate that, and I love everything about people coming. We had Mr. Kelleher come from finance, which I thought was excellent. Charles, Madam President, I thought it was great. I loved hearing from everybody, but I would be remiss if I didn't respond, just kind of from my standpoint and where we are going with budget, so.
Thank you. Ms. Gaines?
Thank you. Let me first clarify, Michael, something you said. You said we might have surplus to cover furniture and science equipment. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then, so the science and tech, whatever, the 30,000, so if I heard you correctly, so we might have surplus, meaning that would not need to move up.
Yeah, well, it's not in there at the moment, and we would not, it's
Right.
not in the budget right now, that's why it's in the gray area.
Right.
But what I'm saying is we may have a surplus this year, and often, in the past and this year as well, we can use surplus to pay for those one-off things that are on our like nice-to-have list.
Okay. So that and then the furniture.
So, and the
Yeah.
furniture would be two things we could do.
Okay. And then I have to, and then the CES Shark Yard Courtyard Project. My
Yeah.
comment on that would be, I would look at this the way Harwich looked at their playground. I think there are grants, I think
Yeah.
there's community funding.
Yeah, so
I feel like there's another way to do that, other than move it into the budget.
And the principal has applied for a grant
Okay.
to help fund that.
Okay. And then with the Dean of Students, I have to echo what Jackie said, because it's not that I do believe we probably need this, but I have to agree with what Terry said. I don't right now think this is the year, because those two curriculum directors from last year, part of the argument, or at least what I heard, was it was to free the administration up to handle discipline. So I'm going to agree with Jackie in the sense I think we need another year, and let's see where we are. I'm also wondering if we do have discipline issues, how can the resource officer be pulled in? I don't know. These are just questions I have. But at this moment, I am going to say for myself that I want to pause on that this year for the Dean of Students.
So, am I hearing that we can vote on the budget as it's presented tonight? And if we need some more clarity, I am sure that any of us could email or give Jen Police a call if we wanted to ask more questions. And we can always continue a conversation, but if we're a mixed bag right now, maybe we vote on this budget so that we can move forward. Maybe there are some good funding things that are coming down the pike that will, help. Mr. Russell?
Madam Chair, I think Michael alluded to 5 minutes ago that, and it cleared my head up, that I would be in agreement in voting for this budget this evening.
Okay.
And whatever comes forward in the next month or 6 weeks, we can revisit that with information alluding to whether high school science or something else. It would be a one-shot thing. So that's where I'd suggest.
I would just add, so the reason I'm keen to get a vote now is so that when we go and present to the select boards in a few weeks' time, we can go with this lower budget rather than the last budget we have, which is significantly higher. It was like 5-point-something% increase rather than, this budget, which captures all the savings we've seen in the last few weeks.
Good point. All right, do I have a motion? Okay. Oh,
Finance.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, because is finance, are we on the agenda?
We are.
So I think because we did vet this through finance, perhaps we put the motion forward. What do you think?
Yep.
Okay, you do it. You're the chair.
Michael, would you like by Harwich assessment and Chatham assessment? Or what or could I just say as presented
You
in
can
your
just say
packet?
as presented.
Okay,
Because
great.
this isn't like the official one yet.
Okay.
This is like, this is official, but it's not like
Yep.
this.
Any vote is official, Mike.
Yeah.
So I move to approve the FY25 budget as presented in our packets.
And
Draft budget as presented in our packets.
And I'll second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? All right, so we'll move
All right.
forward with this draft
Thank
budget.
you very much.
Thank you. Moving right along to our subcommittees, representative and liaison reports. First up is our negotiations subcommittee report. Ms. Finnegan?
So negotiations are going well, moving forward. And that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you. Any questions?
No.
All right. Moving right along to the finance subcommittee report.
Hi, Finance Subcommittee Chair, Jackie Zimmerlund. We met earlier this week and we reviewed the changes to the budget as presented tonight, not only at the budget hearing, but also during our regularly scheduled meeting. We agreed to, not unanimously, we did a what kind of
Consensus?
vote? Consensus vote.
Yes.
Yep, on the budget in order to present
Yes.
tonight. We were all in agreement at our meeting with really it was really more updates than anything. There were no major discussions. So, and we support the budget that we just presented, so that's all we have.
Excellent. Policy subcommittee?
So we met this week, and we are reviewing the field trip policies, which are now 3 separate policies. And there's a lot of material in there. We gathered all of our questions and sent them off to Melissa, and we will continue to vet through the policies. We will meet again at the beginning of March, and hopefully we'll be able to get those wrapped up.
Excellent. Questions? All right. Moving right along to the superintendent's report. Dr. Millen?
Good evening, everyone. I am not Michael, and I am not Scott. But Scott did send a report for me to share with all of you while he is still home recovering. So he wants to recognize a couple of people and a couple of organizations today. So the Monomoy Regional High School Select Choir, under the direction of Miss Richards, who was just here, was selected to perform the national anthem at the opening of the Massachusetts Governor Moore Healey State of the Commonwealth Address on January 17th. The students performed in the House Chamber of the Massachusetts State House at the start of the event. Many thanks to State Senator Julian Sear and Governor Moore Healey for this amazing opportunity for our students. And the strategic planning team was in attendance while we were doing this, and we watched it together, and we all cheered, so it was great. So we also want to recognize that a large painted whale, I think it's that one sitting over there, was part of a Chatham's annual Art in the Park fundraiser and has been donated to the Monomoy Regional High School by an anonymous benefactor. Yes.
There we go.
Oh.
That's great.
So this piece was designed and painted by Whitney Knowlton Wardle, who is a local artist, jewelry designer, and a writer. While the painted whale originally came with copies of each of her books, Knowlton Wardle, the artist, also donated the signed copies of the books to the library for the students to access. So the painted whale will be on display in the Monomoy Regional High School Library, and copies of the books will be available for students to read. So many thanks to both the anonymous community member and Whitney Knowlton Wardle for their generous donations to the Monomoy Regional High School Library. And then lastly, Scott wants to share that Monomoy Regional Middle School science teacher Nancy Gifford was recently invited to participate in the Governor's STEM Council meeting up in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So the council is working to expand kindergarten through college opportunities for students in Massachusetts. So he wanted to thank her for her time and her efforts in that endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that Whitney Walton?
What do I have? Whitney.
Whitney Walton Wardell?
Whitney Knowlton.
Knowlton.
Wardle.
Wardell. Her parent, okay. For Speech Jewelers. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Okay. We have had the presentation of warrants this evening, so I'm looking for a motion to
Can I say
adjourn.
one more thing?
Yes, of course.
Please, it'll be quick. Just to Charles's point earlier about drug education and stuff for younger kids, SRO Massey has started a program where police and fire are actually in the classrooms in the middle school. We're doing, first aid and CPR, and police are doing whatever police talk about. I know part of his syllabus is drug education for the middle school, so that is on the forefront and starting at younger ages.
I think it's similar to their type.
I think it brings
Yeah.
stuff like that back. Yep.
Thank you. All right, motion to adjourn?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Whatever.
Abstained? Excellent. We will adjourn this meeting at 7:53.
Thank you.